Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello, welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today, I am here with author of Hiding Lies and creator of Death by TBR Books, Stephanie Rose. And we are here celebrating your release day for Hiding Lies. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I can't believe it's finally here.
I am so excited. I know that this book has been a long time coming, and I'm happy to finally get to see it out on shelves soon. And just want to give you a huge congratulations. So why don't you tell us and our listeners all about Hiding Lies?
So, Hiding Lies is a horror thriller following Lydia Walker. She's a forensic photographer and she has a very traumatic past. And she has this case that she's working on, and it involves the gruesome murder of a camping couple. Her personal life begins to take a shift when she meets Adam. Enter Adam, very quickly, Adam is a serial killer. It has alternating perspectives between Lydia and Adam, which I really enjoyed because it gives you an inside look at the killer. And I based Adam on real life serial killers. So I compiled a profile on him so it would be even more terrifying, hopefully, to read.
I bet your search history is really interesting.
I don't know if I would not be brought into a white room to be interrogated if they had looked during that period of time in my life.
Yeah, never ever ask about an author's search history. It's never a safe place.
I never really thought of that until now.
Yeah, might be something to keep in mind there. I have definitely Googled some weird things myself, and just as I'm typing, just say, I'm just writing something. It's for my writing. Like, can we have like a writer's search engine for authors?
It's so funny that you say that too, because I've interviewed a lot of authors and I know a lot of authors through my bookshop, and I have never really thought of how grotesque and crazy their search histories probably look during the time that they're writing, but also just in general, because we're weird.
Exactly. And we really just need, like, can you just put in parentheses at the end, I'm a writer. This is for a book. This is research.
This is fiction. This is writing. This is creative writing.
Fiction. Yeah. Don't arrest me. Nothing bad here. So how about we dive into a little bit about your publishing journey for Hiding Lies?
So after finishing the book, I edited the book, and then my partner did as well a few times. And then I sent it to 5 or 6 people, I believe, in different ages, different backgrounds, that people I knew and trusted. And I got their perspective and they sent it back. And then I started sending it to literary agents because I had heard big 5 publishers, even smaller publishers, prefer that you have a literary agent. So I started that, got a lot of no's, got a couple maybes. And the only one that I was super bummed about was, I love B.A. Paris. She is a pretty big thriller writer. And it was really interesting that her agency looked at my book and they want the full manuscript. And when you get a full manuscript, that request, that's a big deal. And that was my only one I had had at that time. And for that one, they had ended up saying that they thought the killer's behavior was unrealistic, but they did enjoy reading it. And I'm just sitting here thinking, if this was true crime, they wouldn't have said that. And this was actually based on true crime. So I thought, okay, that's fine. I put it in a drawer for a while, metaphorical drawer on my computer, a folder. And I tried to get a job in the library world, couldn't find one, opened the shop. COVID happened, survived the shop. And then it was just random. How it ended up being published now is that I do these holiday book exchanges sometimes. And sometimes we get different people that attend those virtually, and they aren't regular customers. They haven't found us. They just found the exchange. And one of them had a book coming out. And I said, you should tell them about your book. And he was very humble. And he said something about his book. And I just said, yeah, I have a book. It's been sitting around forever. Maybe I'll get it published someday. Like, haha. And he messaged me after saying, I'd love to read it. I'm like, okay, he's publishing his own book, but he did it under Mad X Media, which is smart because when you're looking at someone who's self-published, if they see name, author and publisher being the same name, they might not take it as seriously. I'm not knocking anyone that does that. I just think it's smart to come up with a name. And he did. And then after that, he said, I want to publish your book. I've only done mine, but I'd love to do yours. And then he has taken on lots of other authors now, which is really exciting. So I was kind of the guinea pig. His was, but I was too. And we learned together. And he gave me a lot of creative control. And we talked about even release date, like what we would look at. And I said, definitely by Halloween, because I am probably 2/3 Halloween inside and out. And I just wanted it to be released around Halloween because it's my favorite time of year. And we went through the whole process. He let me have a lot of creative control over the cover. And I'm just so grateful that he believed in my book and he really enjoyed it enough that he wanted to publish it and put his own money into it to publish it. And it's behind the scenes when you're an aspiring author. You can't just think, is my book good? And Stephen King says it where you might put down a book and you might go, my book's better than that, and that got published. And that's kind of what I've always had in my head about my book. I say to people, like, it's not amazing. It's not going to win a prize, but it's not the worst thing I've ever read either. I think it's kind of in the middle. Like, I think it's entertaining. I think it's a good debut. I think it's definitely going to scare people away from wanting to camp if they don't already have the creepy vibe from that. And I think I just really enjoyed that, he believed in my book enough to have it be published, and that it's just really special to have somebody involved in it that is also a published author as well now.
That must have been really cool and such an experience to kind of help pioneer a new indie publishing company.
It really was. I gave him feedback at times. Like, for example, we had so many different cover ideas. And I said, no, this is the font you want to use for like a thriller horror. We want my name smaller, the title bigger because I'm not a known author. These are just things I've learned in looking at a lot of book covers, being a bookseller. And I think throughout that, looking at that, I think that was really helpful for him as well. And I've learned a lot, and he's learned a lot behind the scenes of like, you need to have your book returnable. You need to have your book have a regular discount. If those two things aren't there, a lot of bookstores, unless you're a huge one, might not put it in their store. They might put it on their website, but they're not going to actually buy it with their budget because our budgets are very small. So my book is going to be returnable, and it is a regular discount for booksellers, which I think is huge, and for libraries because libraries don't have big budgets either, and they use the same distributing as booksellers. So that's been really exciting too. So it is on his Instagram, which is at MadX Media, Joey Powell, who's my publisher. He has been premiering all these books. He worked on a whole collaboration of short stories with like a prompt with it. He has some great ideas, and kind of like a whole new series called Totally Freaked, which is very Fear Street-esque. And he's looking for those types of stories. And if it's too violent or too scary, he doesn't want it for that specific project. So I think he's doing a really smart thing of having not just novels, but novellas and different kinds of collaborations too.
I really love that, honestly. And it's so cool to really get to see an indie publisher take off in real time. Kudos to both you and Joey Powell, Maddox Media. Shout out, everyone, check them out and just kind of watch this indie publisher grow. I love being able to support that.
I do
And
too.
you mentioned that you obviously are a bookseller and how that experience helped you to create your cover. And you were not the first bookseller slash writer who I have heard this experience from. My own mom she was a bookseller at Barnes and Noble, and before that at Borders when we still had them. May they rest in peace.
Oh, Border.
And She is also an author as well. And she's just always, commenting on covers like, oh, this kind of design, that's going to sell. Oh, no, that font, that's not going to do well in a bookstore. And, what kind of things catch eyes. And I really love how you're able to bring that experience into your own publishing journey. What other kind of tools have you been able to bring in from the experience of a bookseller that has helped you with writing and publishing?
That's a great point and great question. I think that one of the biggest things is also knowing my audience and knowing who's going to purchase my book as a bookstore and knowing how to contact them. There's, a very respectful etiquette you should have when you're contacting a bookstore. And unless you're a bookseller, bless all of the authors' hearts out there who are trying to get published. I get it, and get on shelves in bookstores. But I had many in mind when it was a brick and mortar before we went fully online that they would just come in with their book. Between like November and December, our busiest time of year, I don't have time to talk to you about your book. You have to go, they just needed to contact me via email. And then if I want a copy, I will tell you I want a copy. And I think that's just hard because there is not enough information, I think, out there for people who don't, for aspiring authors and debut authors to know how to do this, that part of it. They have a publisher or they have a literary agent, and if they don't, if they're doing this completely self-publishing, maybe through Amazon or through Ingram or Kirkus or whoever, they don't know that they shouldn't just walk in bookstores. They don't know that they shouldn't send a mass email that has nothing changed in it to all the bookstores in the country. And I think that really helped me because for me, I was a librarian and I was a bookseller. So I have connections and I have people I know in both fields. That's not going to make me a, New York Times bestseller, but it does give me a great way of looking at, okay, this bookstore might carry my book and here's why. Mystery thriller bookstores, horror bookstores, there's a lot of genre bookstores, and that's really exciting now to see genre just grow so much over the last 5 years that I've been in the book selling world for 6 years. I've been in libraries for maybe 4 or 5 years before that. So about 10 years in the industry. And it is very wild how much horror especially has grown in the last 5 years on the screen and on the page.
It really has. And, the genre bookstores really just taking off just shows like how much of a following a niche can have to really support an entire business, which is just so incredible to see. And I love seeing how the bookselling and publishing industry is shifting with these just new changes coming in to focus on genres. And another thing that we have that's, kind of newish in publishing is the blending of genres too, which I'm just, really interested to see how that ties into the growth of genre stores as well.
Genre blending is huge now. Definitely. I completely agree with that. There's so many books that we now call cozy mysteries, that's been around a while. Agatha Christie was our first one of that, the Queen of Mystery, but we have our King of Horror, Stephen King. And I think that Stephen King's a great example. In a bookstore, most of his stuff goes in horror, and I would tend to put him together, but he has almost every genre in one section. And he's a good example of that. My book is a thriller horror. I think it's a very, very, very dark thriller, but I think it does qualify as horror as a lot of the subjects in there. And horror is becoming more not just boo, scary. It's more societal, and it's body horror and being in your own head. And there's just all these different subgenres of that as well. And even with mysteries and fantasy and sci-fi, a lot of them are sci-fi fantasy or sci-fi fantasy romance, or I don't know, this new genre called romantasy. It's not new anymore.
You may have heard of it.
And it was, it boomed right around COVID. And I get it. People wanted to get out of their heads. They wanted to read fantasy. They wanted to read about another world. And sci-fi dystopian, which is hilarious that's what was most popular. And then people were like, okay, this is too close to what we're going through, and we're going through this a lot longer than we thought. So let's go over to fantasy. And then that boomed. So I think it's really interesting, especially when you can even put mystery with fantasy, which I really like, and it does happen here and there, and even horror fantasy. That's a big one. So it's just the possibilities are endless, and I'm so happy we have such innovative and creative writers out there who are getting discovered and who are making these genres. I mean, for me, the first, you don't hear cozy horror often or ever. I don't know if you've heard it, but I've deemed it, I have coined it now. If it isn't, it is now. I believe his name is Joshua Hall. He wrote Mouth, and it's a novella. And I would say it is a feel-good, cozy horror. And if you read the synopsis, you'd be like, really? And I'm like, really, it is. It's found family, and there's this mouth in the ground, and like he's communicating in this way to these two people. And I don't know, I've read it a few times and I recommend it to a lot of people. It has great cover art as well. It's an indie publisher as well. And I don't know, it's a really different style and feel. Because for me, how did that book make me feel when I read it during and after? And that's kind of where the genre lies for me of how I choose where it would go.
So let's go ahead and talk about Death by TBR Books. I love this page that you have and the growing online community that you have cultivated here. And yeah, so I just want to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Yeah. So Death by TBR Books was born named Books Around the Corner in 2018 when it first opened as a brick and mortar. And over time, I kind of started to focus on one or two spooky genres, basically. I started just genre fiction and then I focused it even more. I'll still bring in authors I enjoy because people think it's really funny that I love thriller, horror, and then cozy fantasy. I don't know. TJ Klune got me years ago and he never let me go. And so that's why I love Travis Baldree and Rebecca Thorne. So, and then I'll go watch a murder documentary or read like a body horror book by some other author. I mean, that's just, I cleanse with the cozy fantasy. It's great. I love it. So, but Death by TBR Books right now it's fully online. We ship across the country. We made it through COVID, and now I wanted to do a rebrand because Books Around the Corner. I was living around the corner from where my bookshop was at the time, and one of the main reasons why I opened the bookshop was my inspiration when I was younger. I saw You've Got Mail, and Kathleen Kelly was my role model. So Books Around the Corner was magical and it was beautiful. And I loved being in Gresham, Oregon for a very long time. And I still have customers who order from me now. And that means so much to me. So I think having a rebrand, new logo, new colors again, kind of going back a little bit to being like, hey guys, even though we specialize in horror and thriller, we can still order your fantasy, your romance, anything. And I have monthly book boxes, and we do that as well. So we'll have somebody who orders a romantasy book box. Even though I read a lot of horror and thriller, the great thing about the community of readers and people who work in the industry is that there's a lot of groups for us. So I will ask fellow booksellers and librarians, hey, what are your favorite romantasies right now? Is there anything that isn't as mainstream popular that you've loved? And that's kind of what I try to put into a box. So it's not the same thing for anyone. It's always different. So that's been really nice. My health has gotten worse over the years. So being able to do it online when I'm feeling good and when I'm not, I don't have to do as much has been incredible as well. We've officially shipped every state, including Alaska and Hawaii now. And that just happened a few months ago. I forgot what our last state was, but I was very excited that we did that. So I think I love that we're having this community, and the community part of it that you mentioned, we have a Patreon now. And that's been even more influential on myself, I think. I mean, I know a lot of people who are in it really enjoy it, but I'm at home a lot. I don't go out much because of a lot of health issues I have. And I have this community of readers and watchers of things, and now we get together on there. So we have our book clubs monthly, and then we have our I named it the Steintingler Midnight Society, and that one is another tier, and that's we watch Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, and we read those things as well if they're if there's a The Haunted Mask, for example, book, and then we'll watch the episode and talk about it. And then we have the multimedia madness, and we do a watch party every month on there. So we'll pick a movie together and watch it together. and then chat about it during and after. And I think between all of those things, I'm now having one or two things a week that I get to talk to other readers. And yes, they're customers, but they're also friends. And that's what's different between a small business and, like, say, the big bad A, is that we get to know our customers. And I will email people and be like, hey, you ordered this like a year ago. I think you'd really like this book because you ordered that. And I have a record of that, which is great. So I can tailor recommendations just whenever I want to customers, because maybe they don't know everything coming out. That's my job, is to know as much as I can of what's coming out. And I still miss stuff. But I think now the shop is finally found exactly what I want it to be and what I want it to be for others as well. And every single order I get, I am grateful when I pack an order, because it means a difference. It keeps me here. This November it'll be 6 years we've been open, and or yes, it will be 6 years this November that we're open. And that is crazy to me, that 6 years, that's a long time. Unfortunately, a lot of bookstores close in their first few years. And, with COVID hitting, it closed a lot more than we wanted. But bookstores are opening all the time as well, which is great. But I am just so, so grateful to have the community of weirdos and lovers of darkness that I do in my community of readers.
One of my favorite things about the Death by TBR Instagram page is your regular updates on what books are coming out soon in these genres. And I have to say, this is like one of the best ways that I have been able to find new books coming out, especially from, smaller or indie authors or self-published authors, because the big box stores and, the big A, they send stuff out, but they only really promote, big authors or ones that they expect to make the most money off of.
Right.
Whereas with Death by TBR Books, you regularly post a full list of like, these are all the horror or related books that I could possibly find and when they're coming out. And that has honestly just become like such a great resource that I find myself often checking the page to be like, oh, I wonder what's coming out, in the next month or so in this genre. And you know what? You've always got it posted.
That's good. That makes me feel really good, because I do try to cover other genres besides horror, but of course that's going to be
The main
what I do
focus.
most of. Yeah. And I think I do try to have like kind of a generic post every month of like, here's the books coming out next month that I'm most excited about. So I'm not going to name the TJ Clunes unless I have a special copy, which I did. We had, special edging, but he's good, or they're good. I don't know his pronoun. They don't need me, but there are other authors who, there are books that have come out that people like Mother Horror, Sadie, has said, I read this book and it was really effed up. And then I'm getting back orders for it now. Simon and Schuster doesn't have any copies right now. Amazon doesn't have any copies right now. And I guarantee it's because of her and other people like her who are in the horror community are like, hey, this book went under the radar, guys. And then everybody orders it. And now we're like, okay, it's booked out for like a month. We can't get it yet, but we'll get it to you. But it's exciting how much Instagram and TikTok, I don't love TikTok as much as Instagram, but I know both have been hugely influential on the book community. I think Instagram, more horror thriller, TikTok, more for romance, fantasy. Unfortunately, sometimes though, I've seen certain books get promoted a lot by influencers that end up not being as good as, like, say, a book I found that's a lot smaller. So it does highlight books that I feel like don't need it as much sometimes, that they already have a fan base. But I think that social media overall has been wonderful for the publishing industry and for readers and for writers.
And especially for indie authors, for sure.
Yes.
It has been. I have seen, and I've had a few authors on the podcast as well that have discussed this, but I have seen like how just, couple good videos or posts on Instagram or TikTok has completely changed an indie author's writing career and how their book was received, and how many indie authors have been able to just dedicate themselves more to their craft solely because of social media.
Well, we could mention, since you really enjoy fantasy as well, we could mention a fantasy writer that I think would be the perfect one to mention is Rebecca Thorne.
Oh, yeah.
Rebecca Thorne, a lot of people think Can't Spell Treason Without T is new. And I'm like, no, no, it's not new. It's new to Tor, but it was already published before. Or I don't know, that book called, what you call it, Legends and Lattes. Have you heard of that?
Yep.
I mean, that was already published. He published that, and then it got picked up. Tor's doing this thing where they're picking up these authors after they've been indie published for a few years, and then going, hey, Rebecca, do you want to write 5 books in this series? I don't even know if she has 5 books done or if that was just a 5 book deal, but I do know she had 2 at least going. And now we already have dates for that for the next one. And they're doing beautiful straight to paperback, which I love. I think they all should do that. At least have the option for hardcover, but I think they should have a simultaneous release for people who want to because of money too. A lot of people want to read hardcover books. They can't afford them until I
Yeah.
put them on sale, or they just save up, or they wait for the paperback, which is great. They'll get the hardcover from the library, they read it, they return it, they buy the paperback. But they're doing a lot more with certain titles where they're releasing them straight to paperback, and some of them are cozy fantasies. That genre, for a lot of them, a lot of the authors have been straight to paperback, and I think that really helps. And not putting a lot on what I think, although some of my customers are like, I will read what you say to read, but I think everyone reads what they want to read. But I think that when I recommend a fantasy book, they're like, okay, that has to be really good because she doesn't read that often. It doesn't mean that there isn't a zillion other wonderful fantasy books out there. It's just that I read a very specific niche of fantasy because if it's high fantasy, which is like complex world building. And I know you probably know that, but some people don't know what high fantasy is. I learned that in grad school. And I can't follow that. I cannot follow big worlds and lots of creatures. I need like a very more magical realism. It can have some magical creatures, but it's got to be grounded in something I can visualize for me. So that's why I think I really like those books for like Travis Baldree and Rebecca Thorne and TJ Klune. I mean, also just because I just reread House on the Cerulean Sea, and I'm in the middle of Somewhere Beyond the Sea right now, and I'm just constantly like walking around with my headphones on because I'm audiobooking it because it's the same narrator and he's amazing. And I'm just like tears coming down my face and I'm smiling. Like that's basically how you read his books. And this one's wonderful so far. And I'm savoring every little bit of it. And I've read House on the Cerulean Sea maybe 6 or 7 times because it is such a wonderful book for anyone who's depressed or anxious or has had past trauma. And unfortunately, I've had all of those. So I think that he has a wonderful way of reaching readers through these wonderful characters. And, I read someone like him and I'm like, well, I'm not that good, but I'm still better than some. But I absolutely love his writing. He's had a very hard life, and I'm just grateful for him sharing himself and his work with the world.
That is a glowing recommendation if I've ever heard one. And see, this is exactly why people are like, oh, you mentioned this book. I'm totally going to read that because you just moved that book way up my TBR list.
It is really good. And I was just really surprised. Like every time I read House on the Cerulean Sea, I think like it's going to be the same, but I always catch something different, or I always appreciate one of the characters differently because they're all so different in their own ways. And the way I carry books in my house, like I'm in my bookshop right now, so those are books for customers. But for me to purchase a book and own it, it has to be a book I'm going to reread. That's how I feel. Unless it's a very specific, special relationship I had with that physical book, then yes, I will keep that as well. But or when you have a problem and you have multiple copies of the same book because there's different ones that come out, I do that. I have 2 copies of Mayfly right now. I have the UK cover and the American cover because I like both. So
I now
I'm
have 3 copies of A Discovery of Witches. I've
nice.
got a paperback. I have it on my Kindle, and I have the audiobook, which is what I'm listening to currently. And I also have 3 copies of Blue Graffiti by Callahan Scogman because I had an ARC. Then I got a signed hardcover when I met him in Chicago for his book tour, and then the audiobook recently came out, so I had to get that one too. So I'm like, so I definitely understand the multiple copies of one singular book.
You need one for a shelf trophy. You need one to be able to read and kind of beat up, and then you might need one to write in if you really want to just go to town with like with different quotes and stuff. So I think it's very appropriate. And yes, for all of those books, I have the audio as well. I didn't count that, but I should.
Yeah, I only started reading audiobooks this year. Mostly because of my day job is a lot of very computer heavy at my desk and working remotely. So I was pulling up a computer and just binging Netflix. And it got to the point where Netflix was either canceling everything I wanted to watch, so I wasn't getting a good ending. Or I was kind of just like running out of things. So I started listening to some audiobooks. And I was never huge into audiobooks because I can't pay attention that long. So I really literally had to practice doing just 10, 15 minutes at a time. And now I'm at a point where I can listen to like 4 hours on, 2.0 speed and actually get through, if it's a short book, I can get through a whole one, but, at least half a book while I'm at work. And that has really, really increased the way that I get through my reading for sure, which has been wonderful. But it also means I'm getting double copies of books because I'm like, well, I have this one on my shelf, but I have got a really busy week at work. So I might as well just get the audiobook and listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask me, how do you read over 200 books a year? Because that's usually my average is about 200 books. I mean, like, one, this is my job. It's my only job, and some days I'm not doing a lot in here packing because I'm not doing well and I need to rest. So I'm doing a lot of laptoping with listening. And I'm not a two person. I'm a 1.5 person. I can't do two unless the narrator is really slow, then I can definitely speed it up. But what's really funny to me, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this because you're newer to audiobooks. One, I love that you said the first time you said you're reading audiobooks. And yes, you are listening as well, but absolutely. I get asked a lot of the time, do you think audiobooks are reading? And I said, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And there's still people who don't think it's reading. And I'm like, it is reading. You might miss something, but you're going to miss something if you're reading too. Sometimes you're going to have a thought come in your head and you might miss a paragraph or something. I don't know. But I definitely think that there a lot more production has gone into audiobooks. There's narrators that are incredible that will pop up. And the only problem is if you read a lot of audiobooks, you're going to hit the same narrator. And sometimes you're like, oh, I can't listen to this. I just listened to this narrator do a completely different story. I have to put that one on hold because I didn't know it was the same narrator. Brittany Presley, love her, but she is a narrator for a lot of different thrillers. But I think that when you turn on an audiobook for the first time, whether you're getting it from Libby or Libro FM or somewhere else, and it isn't set to 1.5, it's set to 1, and you start it, and you're just, what is this? What's going on with my brain? Why is everything in slow motion? Is it mush? And it's just because it's at 1. And I go, okay, let's move it up to 1.5 because it really does feel weird to listen to anything on 1. It feels like it's almost that sloth who works at the DMV in that
Yes,
animated.
in Zootopia.
Oh, yeah. That's how I feel like it is when you're listening to it on 1. I'm like, no, I can't.
That is exactly what it feels like. And you are totally right. It does depend on the narrator. Like, for example, the Bridgerton books, I can listen to those on 2.5, maybe even 3. Um, speed. Yeah, she's a wonderful narrator and she was the perfect voice to be able to do the younger characters as well as the Lady Whistledown. Um, but it is a slower speed. So I was able to speed it up and still get the whole thing. And that makes me be able to get an entire book through in like 4 hours and one whole work day, or really half a work day. Bam, book done. Check it off the
Mhm.
list. Next one.
Yeah, it's definitely it is really nice. And I usually try to have 2 audiobooks going at the same time so I can kind of alternate because you can get burnt out of one book, even if it's
Yes.
really good. And then I always have at least one print going. And sometimes an ebook. I did splurge and get the new Kobo because I didn't want to get a Kindle. I had gotten it, and then I returned it because I just like didn't want to do it, but I didn't know what e-reader to get. And Kobo just came out with a color one that you can write notes on, and it's amazing.
Ooh,
So that's the one I'm using. I think it's called the I don't actually I think it's the Kobo Libra, but it's like a new one where you can actually use a stylus on it and it's in color, which is really cool. It's the first
that
one.
is awesome.
Mhm.
I love that. So, what is it that you are working on next? Do you have any projects that you're working on? Are you going to dip back into writing some more? What can we expect to see from you?
It's interesting. I get asked that a lot. Like, what are you writing right now? And I'm really not writing right now. Writing Hiding Lies was a bucket list item, and I'm very grateful I wrote it. I loved writing some of it. I hated writing some of it, and it was really interesting and fun to write characters, and like now they're part of me. And I get it now, where authors will get really connected to the like they gave these characters life. And if you really think of it on that level, I mean, I've had over 100 people read it on NetGalley, which was like the best amount of money I will say for any self-published author or, aspiring author use NetGalley, because it was, three or $400 to be on there for 6 months or so, something around there. Best use of my money ever. That was something I talked about with my publisher, and I said, "Hey, I will front this money." And I think he ended up we paid half. I don't remember. Money doesn't matter. But it's not an insane amount of money, and you are in front of so many more people, and then you get to choose who gets the book, which for me, I'm just looking to see, have they reviewed books? What kind of books have they reviewed? If they've reviewed books similar to mine that they didn't like, they're probably not going to like my book. But if it's someone who's just read a lot of different things, then I'll approve them. I'm not really picky about it, but I am not going to just give it to anyone either. But I do think it was really great. The stats on Goodreads went up by like an insane amount of like to be read. It was just wild. And I was on the front page for most requested for like 2 days. I was like, what? This is crazy. So it was really fun. I did have some print arcs as well. I didn't get a lot, but I did get some, and I sent those out to people I hope will read it. Some of them have, some of them said they will later, which is totally fine. I think that was a huge part of my publishing journey, was successful because I put my book on NetGalley. But what I'm working on next is really just increasing my virtual presence with Death by TBR Books and with my Patreon. I'm loving having book clubs and watch parties. It's a great way to connect with people across the country, other readers that I don't really get to meet in my community. It's really hard to make friends when you're in your 30s, almost 40. And I think it's a great way that I can still connect with others. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on, is just, it is a hard job to keep a bookstore afloat, and I want to hopefully be having this bookstore for a long time. So I'm hoping that that's really where I focus my energy on. I do have some short story ideas that I might put up as part of my Patreon, just to give those supporters like something extra that's creative, not just book lists, because I do a lot of book lists and watch lists. I watch something horror related every day, not just in October, every day. And it's a lot of movies and a lot of shows, but I love it. And I really get to see a lot of things I didn't know were even out there. And I found quite a few films this year that I didn't know about beforehand. So there's a lot of stuff out there that I watch that I don't like, that I wouldn't recommend, but then there's always gems in there too. And I think that focusing on that, focusing on maybe writing some short stories. I always say the same thing to this question too, is that if anyone ever would like to pay me to write, I will absolutely write something else again. But I don't have the time, the energy, the health to write a full novel again. I see authors that push themselves to the point where they need to step back, and I applaud them for all their hard work. But I think writers are some of the worst people for self-care for themselves when they're working through a book and revisions and everything. And I just don't have the energy or time to do that. So I'm going to focus on this book and see how it does, and maybe write some fun short stories to share with Patreon. Like really short stories, like very like scary stories to tell in the dark, just like a few pages. I think that would be really fun versus like longer short stories that would be almost on the cusp of a novella. I think like just very quick, traumatizing horror, 3 or 4 pages of an idea I have that I flush into a very short story would be fun. And I think that that will be something I offer on Patreon, not try to get actually published yet. Um, Having the book out now is I can actually start to contact libraries and readers and see if they're in libraries and try to get people to understand how to do that and see what bookstores they end up in. Because I know some of my customers are across the country and they're going to look for me in different bookstores, and that's exciting. So I think just focusing on that and focusing on my, you know, big achievement of just this book for now is kind of where I'm at. I don't, some people have read it and says they're more for Lydia and Adam. And my answer to that is I don't know. It was not supposed to technically lead to a sequel. It could, but it's supposed to be interpretive. The ending is supposed to make you think of what do you think they did? And I think that when people leave an interpretive ending like that in a thriller horror, it's the way that you answer that question says a lot about who you are, because it's how you would maybe see that happening. And if you're a little darker, maybe you see it going a different way than somebody who's a bit lighter and more on the silver lining side of life. I did really enjoy writing parts of the book a lot. I loved writing from the perspective of Adam. I probably enjoyed a little bit too much writing the kill scenes. They were very therapeutic, but they were very fun. And I think that was really the really fun part. I'm a, what do they say? There's a planner, pantser.
Pantser, yeah.
What is it?
Pantser and
Pantser.
planner, or sometimes plotter.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a blend. I kind of just kind of jumped in with one scene, and then I kind of went from there, and then I kept track of things as I went. But how many kills, who was going to get killed when, because he's a serial killer, so I'm basically choosing his victims for him. So I mean, that was fun. And it takes place in, it takes place in the Portland metro area in Oregon, because that's where I was. All of the kill sites are real campgrounds in Oregon, but they are not named the same name because I didn't want that to be an issue. But I did actually scout out all the locations to see, could he really get over there? Could he have killed them from this angle? I did. I went to every location.
That's amazing.
If that would work. So I do know that this could work. This book, I am really happy with it. And I think that there's other things I've tried to write, just couldn't write. Maybe they were a little bit too realistic. I think I was on like a John Green kick when I was younger, and I've been through a lot of trauma, and I started to try to write that book. And I'm like, nope, not writing that. Gonna stick to really hard fiction. But there's a lot of me and Lydia. I think that true crime kind of came in my life really early on, and so did thrillers. And, I mean, I was watching X-Files and horror movies when I was 6 or 7 years old, watching Forensic Files and Unsolved Mysteries. Like, I remember the theme song, and I was young watching that. So it was a very big fascination when I was young.
I just want to congratulate you again on your release day. I'm so happy to see Hiding Lies out, and I can't wait to pick up my copy.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I love your show, and it means a lot that you took the time to chat with me, and it was really fun.
Thank you. Thank you. And also, don't forget, check out Death by TBR Books. Check out the Patreon for an excellent horror-minded community that you have been growing here. I super love that and support that, and I just can't wait to see where you go next.
Thank you so much. I am very excited too.
Thank you everyone for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @MustLoveBooks Podcast. Thank you and happy reading.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. It's the Sleep Number Everything Smart Bed sale. Every smart bed and base are on sale during our Memorial Day event. Up to 50% off, plus free home delivery. Limited time. Exclusively the Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.